Here on the Colour of Country Life, great to have Tess Walsh from Market Check back with us for 2022. How are you, Tess?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Well, we're off to we've got the harvest finished in many parts of our Flow family, but how are things looking on the prices front for our growers?
Yes, things have rebounded quite a bit since the depths of harvest, just before Christmas really. The last week or so particularly seen some pretty big fireworks through the market, and we've seen that offshore market rally quite significantly as this week's gone on. Just this morning we've had a minor setback in futures pricing, but that's quite typical of when we have such a significant rally.
Yeah, and is that rally on the back of, we talked across the year last year about China stockpiling, for instance. Did they know something we didn't about Russia's intentions in the Ukraine? It just seems there's some geopolitical reasons for prices to go up.
Yeah, so one of the main drivers of the rally this week is Putin and some Russian troops edging closer to that Ukrainian border. So the market's keenly watching that. It's quite significant for global grain markets. So that Black Sea area is responsible for a third of the world's wheat exports, and Ukraine alone is responsible for 10 to 12% of the world's wheat exports, and slightly higher for corn, 15 to 20%. So, significant area to be under threat of war. But it is important to note that the ports of Russia and Ukraine aren't actually that near the potential conflict site, but it's definitely a concern nonetheless.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess on the domestic front, looking like maybe in the Riverina they've still got some headers turning, in other parts of our network maybe as well. But we were looking at projections from ABARES of a record harvest. Is that going to be a dampener on prices, or is this sort of demand and conflict concern overseas going to keep going up and up on price?
Yeah, so, regardless of whether the conflict comes to fruition, which I'm sure everyone hopes it doesn't, but we're coming out of back of a very tight global grain stock situation before Australia's harvested such a record crop. So even though we've harvested this crop into an environment of really tight global supplies. So our price is very well supported by a strong international market, and that's flowing through to places like South Australia and particularly the Eyre Peninsula. We've seen some incredible pricing out of those ports to attract higher milling grades, and more recently this week some of that feed wheat's getting very well priced. We've been trading it at 330 port out of Lincoln and Lucky Bay. It's a slightly different story for New South Wales and Victoria. Their pricing has come under a lot more pressure than South Australia, but the year is long and there'll be many opportunities for growers to be pricing out of grain this year.
Well, speaking about ports, I guess it makes me think about logistics. We've talked in other sectors about issues that have been faced, certainly on the staffing front when it comes to processing. Are we seeing that starting to feed into the market here in Australia?
Yeah, so probably one of the biggest things are there are issues with getting trucks in Victoria at the moment, and that's really helping delivered markets along. So any farmers selling that have their own trucks are kind of at the forefront of being able to take advantage of this. But yeah, look, I think it just sounds like whether it's a truck driver or a cafe worker, there's people shortages right across our regions.
Yeah, the PM got in a bit of hot water suggesting 16-year-olds could drive forklifts. They certainly can't drive trucks.
No, that would be not ideal, no.
Well, Tess, look, it's good to catch up with you on those pricing fronts, and keep an eye on, and certainly I agree with you, we don't want to see a conflict over in the Ukraine, but if it happens, could mean some upside for our farmers. Thanks for joining us today on Flow, much appreciated.
Thanks so much for having me.